Welcome back to 34O, a podcast about intimacy, presence, desire, healing, and the space between people. Before we begin today's story, I also want to share something close to my heart. 34O is now becoming a book in both Swedish and English, and in audio, ebook, and printed format. And it is the first in a series of books on 34O. The stories, reflections, and conversations you've heard in this podcast are slowly becoming something larger. A deeper exploration of love, sexuality, emotional presence, relationships, and what it means to truly meet another human being. What began as conversations in a small corner of the world is now listened to in more than 85 countries. That honestly means more to me than you can imagine. If you want to follow the journey of the book, future episodes, behind-the-scenes reflections, and upcoming releases, make sure to follow the podcast and stay connected. Today's story is called Stella, the Curtains and the Light. And perhaps beneath the sensuality, it is really a story about something many people quietly long for. Not perfection, not performance, but safety enough to finally let the light in. Stella, the curtains and the light. There was something about her eyes, not just the color, that deep blue-gray, but the look, as if she saw right through you and chose to stay. Stella was 37, but there was something timeless about her. She carried her beauty with a kind of self-assurance, as if she knew she was beautiful, but didn't quite trust it yet. Her laughter often came when she was unsure, not the nervous kind, but the kind that burst forth like light when the silence became too vulnerable. It used to happen when someone really saw her. She had grown up in the quiet pastel-colored neighborhoods of Stockholm, where the curtains always hung neatly and people didn't speak too loudly at the dinner table. Her mother had often been present in body, but absent in spirit. Her father traveled a lot. Perhaps that's why Stella, even as a child, began searching for closeness, warmth, adventure, but above all, a home. Not a house, but that feeling of being at home in someone else's gaze. She met her first great love in Maui, a medical student like herself, who made her laugh and dared to let her guard down. He was the one who first showed her that sex wasn't just something you did, but a way to truly connect. She still remembers that night on the beach, how the wind swept over their bodies, how he caressed her slowly as if time didn't exist. Since then, many had tried to reach her. Some had succeeded temporarily, but most got stuck on the surface. Either they wanted her body, her intelligence, or her beauty. Few could hold her soul in their hands. Stella wanted a man who could meet her there, not to save her, not to impress her, but to stand firmly by her side and build something greater together. She used to say she didn't care about money, as long as she had enough so that money wouldn't be an obstacle. She wanted to be able to travel, enjoy life, create memories, to go to the food market in Barcelona, cook dinner together in a house in Tuscany, lie naked on a blanket at dusk. When she made love, it was often with the curtains drawn, not to hide, but to create a bubble, a private space, an in-between place where only presence and skin existed. At the same time, she could also be exhilarated by letting passion unfold in new ways. Against the kitchen wall, on the living room floor, on a chair by the window. Once in the middle of a conversation about life and the structure of wine, she rose from the bar stool in the kitchen and leaned against the counter. Her eyes met his with a smile that was halfway between playfulness and desire. "We talk too much," she whispered. He stepped toward her. His hands slid along her hips, beneath the thin dress, and she let her head fall back, exposing her neck. Her breathing deepened. He knew she loved foreplay that began with words but ended in silent contact. When he lifted her up and placed her gently on the kitchen counter, she pulled him closer with her legs. "You make me feel valuable," she whispered. He didn't answer. Instead, he kissed her, first tenderly, then with hunger. Her body responded in waves, arcs, soft sighs. They needed no pillows, no sheets, no candles, just closeness. Her laugh, just as he entered her, wasn't nervous this time. It was a laugh of relief, of feeling held, heard, desired. There, amid olive oil, garlic, and starlight, they made love as if the whole world could begin anew right in their movement. What she longed for most was to be someone's goddess, not in the sense of being worshipped, but of being met with reverence. Someone who took his time, kissed her slowly, caressed her with his hands as if he were reading a book he never wanted to put down. Perhaps it was precisely in the contrast she lived, between the outer light and the inner curtains, between the strength in her gaze and the uncertainty in her laughter, between the body that wanted to be loved and the soul that wanted to be understood. She knew what she wanted now. A man to talk to for hours, to laugh with in the kitchen, to make love with in silence. Someone to cuddle with, plan a future with, maybe even become a mother with. Until he showed up, she would keep opening the curtains and letting in the light she knew she deserved. There's something deeply human about Stella. On the surface, she's very beautiful, confident, intelligent, sensual, and emotionally aware. A woman many people probably would describe as strong, successful, or independent. Yet beneath that strength lives something much softer. The longing to fully exhale in someone else's presence. I think many people, especially today, recognize that feeling more than they admit. We live in a world where people are constantly exposed, connected, and visible, yet emotionally protected at the same time. We share our thoughts, our bodies, our ambitions, our identities. But many of us still struggle to reveal the parts underneath. The frightened parts, the longing parts, the parts that simply want to be chosen without having to earn it. That's what Stella carries inside her. Not weakness, no dependency, but the deeply human desire to feel emotionally safe enough to soften. And perhaps that is part of what modern intimacy is really struggling with. So many people today meet each other through performance first, through appearance, through status, through sexuality, through carefully curated confidence. But very few people feel truly met beneath those layers. That's why Stella's laughter matters in the story. Because her laughter appears precisely in the moments where vulnerability enters the room. Not because she's superficial, but because closeness is exposing. When someone truly sees us, something inside the body reacts. Sometimes with silence, sometimes with tears, and sometimes with nervous laughter. The nervous system does not only respond to danger, it also responds to intimacy. And Stella, like many people, carries both longing and caution inside herself at the same time. I also think there's something important in how sensuality is portrayed in her story. The sexuality itself is not really the core. The kitchen, the wine conversation, the eye contact, the emotional tension, the feeling of being desired slowly rather than consumed quickly. That is the intimacy. The physical connection simply becomes the continuation of emotional presence. Many people think intimacy begins with touch. Often it begins much earlier than that, in attention, in emotional steadiness, in feeling emotionally safe enough to stop performing. And perhaps that is also why Stella longs for reverence rather than worship. There's a difference. Worship often creates distance. Reverence creates presence. She does not want to be placed on a pedestal. She wants someone capable of seeing both her strength and her fragility without becoming intimidated by either. Someone who can remain emotionally present long enough for her body and soul to trust what is happening. I think many women carry that exact longing today. Not necessarily for a perfect man, not for endless passion, not even for certainty, but for emotional steadiness. For a relationship where they do not constantly have to hold everything together themselves. Where femininity does not become performance. Where softness is allowed to exist without fear. At the same time, many men carry a very parallel longing. To feel needed beyond performance. To feel emotionally trusted and safe. To feel that their presence matters, not only what they achieve. Perhaps that is why stories like Stella's resonate. Because beneath sexuality, beneath attraction, beneath romance itself, there is often a much deeper human desire to come home inside another human being. And maybe that's why the title matters too. The curtains and the light. The part of us that hide. The parts that protect themselves. The parts that learn to survive through control, distance, or self-sufficiency. And still, somewhere inside us remains that the quiet hope that one day someone will gently open the curtains, step into the room, and stay long enough for us to finally let the light all the way in. Thank you for listening to this episode of 340. If this story resonated with you, feel free to share it with someone who might need it. 340 continues to grow around the world, and I'm deeply grateful that these conversations about intimacy, vulnerability, sexuality, and human connection are now reaching listeners across more than 85 countries. And as I mentioned, the upcoming 340 books in both Swedish and English are currently in progress, and more information will be shared soon. You can follow the podcast for future episodes, reflections, and updates about the books and upcoming guests. Until the next time, Stay open, stay honest, and stay human.